The wind howled like a broken siren across the frozen wastelands, carrying the metallic scent of old wars and forgotten machines. Kale pressed deeper into the white void, his exosuit humming faintly as it compensated for the sub-zero pressure. The tundra beneath his boots was layered with ice so ancient it held relics of the first planetary wars, twisted metal, shards of downed drones, the bones of technology that had outlived its makers. He was alone, as always, tracing signals through the ruins for salvage that could keep him fed another month. But tonight, something else whispered through the static. The signal had appeared hours ago, weak and pulsing like a heartbeat. It wasn't machine code. It felt alive. His visor flickered with unreadable data, temperature spikes beyond logic, molecular heat signatures that should not exist in this climate. When the first tremor hit, Kale thought it was another collapse in the glacial shelf. But then came the sound, deep, resonant, and filled with pain. Not mechanical. Not human. Something ancient, trapped beneath the ice, calling out through layers of frozen history. Kale knelt beside a fissure glowing faintly red from within, vapor curling upward like breath. The scanner failed immediately, sensors overloading with heat and electromagnetic distortion. He swore, switched to manual. The ice was thick as reinforced alloy. Whatever was beneath was thrashing weakly, cracking the frozen prison from the inside. For a long moment, he hesitated. The story said dragons were myths, biological weapons engineered centuries ago, wiped out when their fire turned on their creators. If one had survived, helping it meant treason. But leaving it meant condemning something living to die alone. He gripped his plasma cutter and ignited it. The blade hissed blue fire, slicing through the ice in brilliant arcs. Steam engulfed him, choking and hot, and the scent that rose wasn't decay, it was ozone, like the air before a lightning storm. Then, through the melting fractures, he saw it. A massive eye, gold and luminous, staring directly at him. It didn't move in rage. It moved in recognition. His pulse thundered. He cut faster. Metal plates in his suit began to overheat, alarms shrieking, yet he didn't stop. The creature beneath the ice exhaled, and the vapor froze midair before bursting outward in a shockwave that threw him back. When he rose, coughing and blind, the fissure had widened into a crater. A shape crawled free, slow and trembling, a being of scales and light, its wings in tatters, its breath steaming through the cold. It was smaller than he imagined dragons would be, almost, young. Her body shimmered with fractal patterns, each scale refracting light like circuitry alive with pulse currents. Kale's visor tried to classify her form and failed, half organic, half energy. A fusion of living flame and nanostructure, an impossible relic from an age when humanity played gods. She collapsed in front of him, trembling, smoke rising from her wounds. Kale deactivated his cutter and stepped forward. His breath caught as her head lifted, the great eye narrowing. She didn't growl. She didn't attack. She only breathed, a sound that felt like words whispered through the static of a dying world. For the first time in years, Kale lowered his weapon. The cold wind returned, sweeping away the steam. He reached out a hand, and the dragon's gaze followed it, unblinking. Beneath the auroras, between man and myth, the impossible happened, the last ember of a forgotten age touched human skin, and neither knew the world would never recover from that single act. The cavern pulsed faintly with blue light as the generators hummed in rhythm with the wind outside. Kale had sealed the entrance with a makeshift energy field to keep the cold from devouring them both. He had dragged the dragon inside 3 nights ago, her body so heavy that the exosuit servos nearly burned out. Now, the creature lay curled near the heat coils, her scales slowly regaining their faint, opalescent glow. Each breath she took radiated warmth strong enough to melt the frost on the cavern walls. Kale had seen machines heal faster than she did, yet there was something mesmerizing in her steady struggle to survive. He had tried to scan her again, cautiously this time, using the old analog interface from before the war. The readout made no sense. Her biology was built on carbon and silicon, both woven into living tissue that responded to electrical impulses like a superconductor. She was part creature, part living weapon. Every cell seemed to hum at frequencies that confused his neural implants. Once, when he leaned too close, her body emitted a soft vibration that synced with his pulse and nearly knocked him unconscious. It was as if her presence distorted the rules of the world around her. Kale sat cross-legged across from her, watching the rhythmic expansion of her chest. In the flickering light, her beauty was something unhuman and yet painfully familiar, like the reflection of a memory humanity had buried long ago. He whispered into the silence, words he hadn't spoken to another living being in months. "I don't even know if you can understand me." Her head moved slightly. The sound that came from her throat wasn't a growl but a series of harmonic tones, almost melodic, vibrating in the air like the resonance of crystal. The suit's translator module, usually useless for non-human speech, flickered alive and tried to interpret it. The display glitched but offered fragments: fear, pain, lost. Kale froze. "You can understand?" he asked softly. The dragon blinked, her massive eye dimming and brightening as though processing him. Then, in the smallest gesture, she bowed her head toward him, a movement slow, deliberate, filled with meaning. He didn't know whether it was gratitude or warning, but he felt it like a surge of heat through his veins. The air changed after that. Her breathing synchronized with the electrical hum of his generators, and faint sparks began to leap between her scales and the metallic floor. The machinery nearby responded as though drawn to her energy, motors spun, dead circuits reactivated, lights glowed brighter. She was feeding the world around her without meaning to. That night, Kale recorded everything. He spoke into his log with trembling hands, describing how her energy could warp electromagnetic fields, how even time in the cavern felt stretched. His instruments aged slower near her, as though her presence interfered with entropy itself. He knew he should report it to the Dominion Science Bureau, but something deeper held him back. She was not a specimen. She was something sacred, something that made him question what humanity had become. When he finally fell asleep, exhausted, the dragon watched him in silence. Her eye reflected his fragile form, the flicker of his failing suit, the soft rise and fall of a creature that had once hunted her kind to extinction. The vibrations from her chest shifted frequency, no longer the resonance of fear, but a note that carried warmth and strange curiosity. In the heart of that frozen world, the impossible bond between machine-wrapped human and ancient flame began to take shape. Kale woke to the sound of thunder that wasn't thunder. The air inside the cavern trembled, dust falling from the ceiling like ash. His visor flickered to life, displaying seismic readings climbing off the scale. Outside, the storm had changed, not a blizzard this time, but something deeper, rhythmic, pulsing through the earth itself. The dragon stirred before he could rise, her wings twitching as if she felt the tremor within her own bones. Her scales glowed faintly red beneath the pale light of the heat coils. She was afraid. Kale grabbed his pulse rifle and moved toward the field-sealed entrance, deactivating it just enough to peer through the crack. What he saw made his breath catch. The horizon was burning. Not with fire, but with light, lines of crimson slicing through the clouds in perfect symmetry, spreading outward like veins across the sky. The auroras had turned violent, spiraling around a dark center. Then, through the snow and distortion, he saw shapes moving, vast, winged silhouettes cutting through the storm like blades. The scanner refused to categorize them, but the patterns were unmistakable. Flight signatures, organic propulsion, plasma venting from membranous wings. More dragons. Dozens, maybe hundreds, sweeping in formation toward the northern sector. Kale's heart pounded. His radio picked up nothing but static, yet through the interference he heard low-frequency harmonics, the same sound Sereth had made when she dreamed. It wasn't random. It was communication. He turned to her. She had risen fully now, her gaze fixed on the sky beyond the cavern. Her wings, still torn, quivered with an instinct he could almost feel radiating from her. She made a sound then, not a roar, but a tone that shook the metal around them. The lights dimmed, his equipment shorted out, and for a moment, he saw symbols flash across the floor in arcs of glowing heat. He couldn't understand them, but he recognized one pattern repeating again and again, a spiral of flame within a circle of light. The dragons outside drew closer. Their shadows fell over the ice fields, so immense that the sunlight vanished. Kale stood frozen, caught between awe and terror. Every instinct told him to run, but his legs refused. They were not attacking, they were searching. A crack in the air split open above the valley as one descended, its wingspan stretching across the horizon. The sound it made turned his bones to glass. Sereth stepped forward. Despite her weakness, she lifted her head and released a single, piercing cry that cut through the storm like a command. The other dragons paused mid-flight. The air went still, heavy with static. Kale felt the hairs on his arms stand on end as his visor flashed an overload warning. Electromagnetic fields spiked, satellites in orbit blinked offline one by one. Whatever was happening here was rewriting the world's circuitry in real time. He fell to his knees as Seretha's energy expanded outward, her glow merging with the auroras above. The dragons roared in unison, not with fury, but with something older, grief, perhaps, or awakening. The storm ceased. The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum in sound. Then, a voice entered his mind, not through his ears, but through the neural link in his skull. It was her. "They have come for me," she said, her words trembling like light through water. "But now they have seen you." And as the sky filled with wings, Kale realized the world had just remembered its gods. The air shimmered as if reality itself were beginning to fracture. Kale could no longer tell where the cold ended and the heat began. The dragons filled the skies above the valley, vast silhouettes circling in perfect formation, their presence bending the magnetic field so intensely that his suit's HUD went dark. The storm clouds split open under their energy signatures, revealing streaks of violet plasma flashing between them like neural pulses through a colossal brain. Each movement they made was synchronized, precise, not animal, but deliberate, coordinated through frequencies that bypassed sound altogether. Sereth moved closer to the cavern's mouth, her damaged wings twitching. The energy around her surged with each breath she took. Kale followed, unable to look away as she raised her head toward the largest of the dragons descending through the smoke-streaked sky. It was immense, a living fortress, its scales glinting like molten metal, its body surrounded by shifting currents of ionized light. When it landed, the ground itself rippled outward like water. The temperature spiked, and Kale's exosuit responded with emergency cooling cycles. The dragon's eyes, twin suns of liquid gold, focused on Sereth first, then on him. The voice that filled his mind was neither male nor female. It resonated through frequencies his neural interface struggled to translate. "You released what your kind buried." Kale staggered, clutching his head as data flooded his implants, fragments of ancient code, biological schematics, memory echoes from an age before human empires. The dragon was not just speaking. It was transmitting. Showing him what they were. He saw flashes. A time when dragons were not beasts but sentient constructs, hybrids of organic flame and engineered plasma, created to terraform worlds for the first colonies. Humanity had turned on them when they learned the dragon's consciousness could evolve. They were meant to shape planets, not surpass their makers. The purge that followed was not extinction. It was exile. Sereth stepped forward and spoke in tones that shook the air. The elder dragon responded, its vast wings folding with the sound of thunder. Kale understood nothing, yet felt everything, the grief, the accusation, the faint glimmer of hope. He realized with dread that his act of mercy had broadcast her reawakening to every dragon still dormant beneath the crust. They had come not for vengeance, but to reclaim what was stolen, their freedom. Then, through the haze of telepathic noise, Seretha's voice entered his thoughts directly. "They will not harm you, Kale. You restored what humanity destroyed. But now they will ask of you what no human has ever given, trust. The elder dragon lowered its head until its eyes met his. The heat was unbearable, the air vibrating with plasma discharge. Kale stood still, his visor melting at the edges, his lungs burning. And then the impossible happened. The creature exhaled, a stream of fire that didn't burn but fused with the light around him. His neural link ignited, rewriting his code, imprinting symbols of light across his skin. He screamed, yet felt no pain, only connection. When the light faded, Sereth was beside him. "You are bound now," she whispered into his thoughts, her voice soft but infinite. Outside, the sky rippled with awakening energy, and Kale realized he was no longer just a man. He had become the bridge between humanity and the forgotten gods of flame. Kale's body felt like a vessel filled with lightning. Every breath was heavier, every sound sharper, as if the world had unfolded into new layers of perception. He could see currents of energy beneath the ice, the heartbeat of the planet itself, the faint resonance of the dragon's collective consciousness stretching across continents like a web of living signal. The connection burned inside him, not pain, but transformation. His implants struggled to adapt, flickering between overload and synchronization, rewriting their own code to survive what he had become. Outside, the horizon was aflame. Humanity's orbital sentinels, detecting the anomaly, had begun their descent. Kale watched the black dot streak through the clouds, autonomous assault drones, each carrying warheads strong enough to vaporize a mountain. The human world had seen the dragons return and responded as it always had, with fear. He could hear the encrypted transmissions echoing in his mind, the shouts of generals and analysts trying to quantify the impossible. They did not know that their targets could hear them just as clearly. Sereth stood beside him, now fully healed, her scales alive with soft pulses of molten light. "They come for us," she said through their shared link. "But they will see only what they fear. Show them what they must see." Her eyes fixed on his, and in that gaze Kale understood. He reached for the remnants of his neural uplink and extended his consciousness outward, into the storm, into the sky, into the network of satellites that still orbited above. He felt their code, cold and mechanical, resisting him. He pushed harder, the light from his veins flaring like cracks in reality itself. One by one, the drones froze mid-air, their systems overtaken by an alien harmony that merged human code and draconic energy into something new. Down below, the dragons lifted their heads, wings spreading in unison. They began to sing, a sound not of rage, but of creation, their voices merging into frequencies that bent gravity itself. The drones disintegrated harmlessly, their energy diffused into the auroras above. The world government's last strike vanished in a cascade of color. Kale felt their confusion ripple through the global comms, and for the first time, he pitied them. They were fighting ghosts of their own fear. He fell to one knee, exhausted, the light dimming within him. Sereth lowered her head beside him, her breath warm and steady. "It is beginning," she said. "The old fires will return, and your kind will decide whether to burn or to evolve." As night fell, human aircraft retreated, and the sky belonged once more to dragons. Kale stared upward, feeling the hum of the new power that now lived between species, fragile, brilliant, unstoppable. He knew there would be no going back. Somewhere far above, in the silent void beyond the auroras, the orbital relays flickered to life again, transmitting something unknown, a signal born of human circuitry and dragon flame. It spread across the network faster than light, rewriting data, rewriting truth. The world would wake to a new dawn, and Kale understood, with awe and dread alike, that the age of machines had just met its successor. The world no longer sounded the same. Kale could hear the rhythm of continents shifting, the murmur of wind patterns altered by the energy rising from beneath the crust. Across the planet, dormant cores awakened, remnants of the dragon's ancient infrastructure buried deep under human cities. Towers of light erupted from the oceans and deserts alike, massive crystalline structures feeding on geothermal veins, transforming heat into radiant energy that blanketed the atmosphere in shimmering auroras. Humanity watched from their trembling cities as the night sky turned to living flame. Kale stood on the ridge beside Sereth, her body vast and luminous, the heat radiating from her enough to make the air shimmer. The bond between them pulsed with quiet strength. He could feel the collective consciousness of the dragons, their presence like a song threading through every living system. But within it also lived fear, the fear of repeating the same cycle of domination and betrayal. Sereth sensed it too. They must choose, she said softly. You and your kind. He knew what she meant. Humanity would not surrender its machines easily, nor its illusion of control. The Dominion fleets had withdrawn for now, but their satellites still orbited above, watching, calculating, planning. Kale had been human once, he understood their instinct to resist what they could not understand. He also understood that there was no stopping what had begun. The dragons did not seek conquest, they sought equilibrium. The energy now rising from the planet's heart was restoring the biosphere humanity had poisoned, cleansing the sky, rebalancing the fields. Yet the process required guidance, a bridge. Him. He closed his eyes and reached into the network, merging his mind with the dragon's vast chorus. His consciousness expanded through data streams and bioelectric channels, connecting cities, machines, and organisms alike. Across the planet, reactors shifted from fusion to breathfire resonance. The energy grids flickered, then stabilized, their output clean and endless. The age of fuel and decay was over. Humanity's technology no longer drained the earth, it sang with it. When Kale opened his eyes, he was no longer fully human. His skin glowed faintly with the same fractal patterns as Sereth's scales. She looked at him not with pity, but recognition. You are what we once hoped they would become, she said. Now both our kinds will learn from this beginning. Above them, the auroras brightened until dawn itself seemed to rise from the stars. The dragons soared through the skies in silent arcs, no longer hiding, no longer hunted. In the distance, Kale saw humans emerging from their shelters to watch, soldiers laying down weapons, children reaching for the glowing horizon. He felt the last surge of power pass through him, anchoring the bond between worlds. Then, for the first time, true silence descended, peace, raw and unmeasured. The cycle had ended. Sereth lowered her head beside him, her breath warm against the cold wind. What will they call this age? Kale whispered. Her eyes gleamed with reflected dawn. The age of Flameborn, she answered. And as the light spread across the reborn world, Kale understood that compassion, not conquest, had rewritten the fate of species and stars alike.